Welcome to this week's edition of Brews Cruise. I am your host, Chris Jacobson, and I have a special guest, a Winona guest, here with us today. Merle Hanson is on the podcast today, and he has a whole lot of things he wants to talk about. Merle, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Chris. It's nice to be here.
And you requested the Kite Soda, which I don't even know what this is, but I know it's a THC soda.
The THC soda that chills my bones. And when you get to be 65 years old, your bones need relaxing because they ache, their joints hurt, this hurts, and that hurts.
Absolutely.
And so I like this Kite Soda. I think it's a really good product.
And now I've had THC seltzers, but I've never had a THC soda.
Okay.
And when I picked this up, I noticed that there's multiple different flavors. There was orange. You sent me this one on a photo, so I grabbed the ginger ale.
Yep.
Then I picked up one other one for myself, which was citrus. So I'm going to try that one myself then.
I find it's, when I come home from work or writing too many stories and my mind is just all frizzled, I can pop myself one of those and all that tension, it's gone from me.
Well, let's crack one of these bad boys open.
Let's crack one of these bad boys up.
Kite Soda.
Kite Soda.
Cheers, Merle.
Cheers, brother.
All right, let's see what this tastes like. Tastes like a ginger beer.
Yep.
Tastes just like a ginger beer. My wife, before she was pregnant, she loved having mules, Moscow mules.
I love Moscow mules.
And they make it with ginger beer, and they are very, very good, but she can't have that anymore, at least until she gives birth. But this is cool. I've never heard of this, and how did you ever come to know about this?
Well, we went sampling. We went out and we checked different liquor stores and stuff like that, and we checked 5 milligram and 10 milligram, and they all got different tastes.
Okay.
And so we started drinking this Kite stuff, and we found it was really, really good. And we used to drink the stuff that was sold at Two Phantoms down there. Yeah. And that was pretty good. And I don't know where they are now with their business plan and if they're going to start brewing the THC sodas again or not. But
so I know that they have seltzers, I'm pretty sure there. I haven't bought any, but they did have those. You're right, because I grabbed a couple, and there was just 5 milligrams. 5 milligrams, yeah. And I tell you what, though, you have one. It doesn't taste like it just tastes like a regular drink, not alcoholic, nothing like that. And it was relaxing. You go to bed and just go right to sleep. No big deal.
I know a lot of people who take them to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Because it does a trick.
So it has the Delta 9 in it, and it has the Delta 8. And okay. So this is out of the Twin Cities, it looks like.
Is it?
Yeah. That's what it says. It says we use only Minnesota grown and processed cannabis to make our refreshing craft sodas. So very cool. This is actually a very good drink. I'm interested to try my seltzer one next when I get home sometime. So Merle, you contacted me on Facebook. That was awesome. And I love the way you contacted me. If you ever want to interview a slightly sane writer, get a hold of me.
Well, most writers aren't wired like other people.
Okay.
And I wish I could be wired like you. I wish I could be wired like your dad. I wish I could be wired like Bob Kierlin, but my mojo on the inside isn't like that. Sanity left me when I was a young man. I had a breakdown, what you would call a breakdown.
Okay.
And I'm a paranoid schizophrenic, and somehow I've maintained control. Regain control. I've been behind locked doors. I've been put away. I've been put on a 72-hour hold. I've heard voices.
Okay.
I've seen dead people, living dead people.
Holy smokes!
And it's so much a part of my life. I was 19. College student, like it hits so many people. Mm-hmm. People who get schizophrenia, it's between 18 and 19, early on. You've probably got friends whose lives fell apart between when they were 18 and 19 years old. And I started hearing things. I started feeling things. The hair would raise up on the back of my neck. I'd be the only person in the room. But something was there. And it took me a long time to put a face to that experience. First dead person I saw, I think, I was living in Spokane, Washington.
Okay.
I was having a really hard time in life. I had left Winona. I said, I got to get away. So I headed out to Spokane, and found a place to stay and work the summer, just trying to get my groove back on. But I needed some weed. I just needed some weed, so I headed out under the bridge in Spokane. And so I'm down there nosing around. I mean, I don't know why I would choose to look under a bridge for weed. I should have gone to the college campus. But I'm down there looking for weed. And this lady comes up to me, and she was all dressed in black. She had this long nose and a wart on her thing, and she pointed her finger at me, and she goes, "The devil's going to get you." Well, I'm an 18-year-old kid, right?
Yeah.
I ran. I mean, I was scared shitless. Not that she was good. I mean, I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, I came back to town, and my dad and my uncle brought me into the psychiatric unit, brought me to Mayo Clinic, got an appointment with the psychiatrist, brought me to Mayo Clinic. They talked to me, they admitted me. Dad later told me that it was the hardest thing he had ever had to do, because he tried to get me to help through the courts. And so he had to go through the courts. And,
Okay.
And, you know, most schizophrenics don't make it back. Very few of us make it back.
Sure.
We end up dead, or we end up living in an institution, or we end up medicated so we drool and we can't hardly talk. So in that regard, I'm very, very lucky.
Sure. And here you are today.
I mean, where else would you rather be?
Yeah.
Brews and Cruise?
I know, the Brews
Come
Cruise
on,
Podcast.
I mean, this is where it's at.
And you have awesome stories from what people have told me.
Well, I hope you start to read them, because young people like my stories as much as old folks.
Really?
But it is. I went to Lewiston High School and spoke to some 7th and 8th graders.
Sure.
Once. And I wrote them the Deer Hunter story, which is in Portraits book.
Okay.
They were open mouth. I've never heard 7th. You know how hard it is to get 7th and 8th graders to shut up and be quiet and
Sometimes, yeah.
still?
I do.
These kids were absolutely still.
Really?
It's a, you know, I keep my stories short.
Yep.
They're 10 minutes, you know, and for 10 minutes, you're in a different place. So whatever you were worried about, it's like one of these THC sodas.
Yeah.
You're gone, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what. We got too much noise in the world, too many distractions.
Well, nowadays our attention span with everything being so quick and so short, it is tough for some people, myself included too sometimes. But you're right. You just told me that story about going to Spokane, and you had me in for like 2 or 3 minutes right there, listening to it, and I didn't speak a word hardly.
Yeah. I mean, Winona.
Yeah.
Winona's stories and the dead people of Winona, the legends of Winona, the myths of Winona.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all over. You go into any local bar in town, you go to the High and Low, or you walk into the old Steve's Lounge, and you walk into anywhere, and they're filled with the old people. They're filled with the old people, their stories. And the guys sitting on the bar stools who had light fall on their heads, they all got stories, and they remember things that happened where things broke down, and you had to learn to stand up. You know, this town ain't normal. I mean, we're a river town.
Yeah.
You know, and we've always had a blend of different people. We're never straight line thinkers. We all got, and that's why some of our businesses are so successful, because these guys think out of the box.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't care if you run Peerless Chain or Fastenal or any RTP, any of the big startup companies, Jacobson Properties. Your dad didn't make his money just following in step. He had to think.
Yeah, outside the box.
Outside the box, and that's what it's all about. And all over this town are people who think outside the box.
What are some good, give me a good story about Winona that you have.
Lena Weinberg.
Who?
Lena Weinberg.
Who's that?
Oh, she was here in 1856.
Okay.
She was 5 foot tall, and she was ugly as sin.
Okay.
She came from Germany, and she ran the brothel that was in the Huff House.
Oh.
Her and Colonel Cockrell and E.D. Williams were the proprietors of the Huff Hotel. And it was the best hotel. It was the nicest hotel. It was freewheeling. I mean, Winona was a rough town. You got to remember we had dirt roads and pots, and there were pigs coming. The 1,300 steamboats came to the shores of Winona in 1859.
Wow.
They brought cattle, they brought people, they brought animals, they brought foods, they brought... The biggest paddle wheeler, my understanding, was the Minnesota Packet Company, which was founded by Orrin Smith. Orrin Smith was the founder of Winona, and he would bring people up from Dubuque and all points west because we didn't have a way of crossing this. Whoops.
That's okay.
We didn't have a way of crossing this river until 1872.
Sure.
When they put a wooden train trestle across the Mississippi River.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time that happened, the old locomotive went over and the trestle collapsed in the river.
Oh, no.
No shit.
Yeah.
Well, pardon my French.
That's okay.
So as a storyteller then, what do? I start thinking about, okay, who is losing their interest to the train industry? The ship captains.
Sure.
And the paddle wheelers. So then the boys at the old Kresge Cafe, or one of the cafes that were all over downtown at one time, start talking about the paddle wheelers maybe sabotaging that.
Oh, yeah, a little conspiracy theories.
A little conspiracy.
I like
and
that.
it isn't just our generation that's got them running through us.
Sure.
It's everybody. But Lena Weinberg, she accumulated a lot of money. When she died, they found $26,000 in gold coins. Now, this is 1889, 1886. $26,000 was a...
Well, it was a big chunk of change back then. Yeah.
And she had it in false bottoms.
Oh, gotcha.
In her piano stool and in her luggage.
Mm-hmm.
Well, by 1889, because that hotel was built in 1856, but by 1889 it was kind of, motels are good for about 20, 30 years, even today,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it was looking a little shabby. And so the money boys, and they, in the late 1800s, there were a lot of deep pockets.
Okay.
There were a lot of three-piece suits walking around with eating 7-course meals and, pounding cigars and doing the whole bit. And they'd been trying for years to get Colonel Cockrell and Lena to sell.
Sure.
Lena refused. They tried putting her in the asylum in Rochester. They put her in the asylum in Rochester. She wouldn't sell. They were Cockrell's nieces and everybody. John Ludwig was the mayor. He was president of the German bank.
Okay.
Oh, he was crusty. He lived right across the street from St. Martin's,
Really?
but he was Catholic.
Okay.
He lived right across there, and he walked around with a cane. And you read in the old Winona newspaper project about this guy. Well, he'd be regularly getting in fights and taking his cane after people.
Oh,
This was a money bank president. Can you imagine Greg Evans or whoever's Rod Nelson who's ever running that down there now? It just couldn't happen.
Yeah, times are different back then.
Times are different. Ludwig eventually persuaded Colonel Cockrell to sell first. He had the Ludwig Motel, which is where Peter's Beer Garden
Oh,
is
really?
now.
Okay.
It was a 3-story brick building.
Yeah.
And he sold it. Well, Lena owned 10% of it. When Williams died in 1872, and that's a story in it too, Cockrell gave her 10% of the company, and she was pilfering 10%. You get $26,000, and you're pilfering. You're more than your fair share, and you're selling. She had the ladies up on 3rd floor of the Huff Hotel.
Okay.
And they were the prettiest. Winona girls are pretty, right?
Sure. Yeah.
They're you can't beat them, and so Lena did that. But in 1886, she was doing her morning constitution in back of the Huff House.
Okay.
Or Colonel Cockrell's house, which was on the corner of 4th and Johnson, where the old Winona Opera House was.
Okay,
before.
Yep.
Okay, that was there. She's doing her morning constitution. And the next thing you know, she comes flying out of that outdoor potty house. What do they call them? Outdoor potty house. Comes flying down and forces you, and her skirt's on fire. And right there in the middle of 4th and Johnson, Lena Weinberg took her last breaths.
Okay.
And the local folk immediately said, well, she committed suicide. And you can imagine all the preachers and pastors in town
Yeah.
condemning people for taking their own lives. But when you look at it a little bit more, because I'm a writer. I don't trust much or nothing. I'm a little bit suspicious, you know?
Sure, yeah.
And I start digging. And I noticed that after a couple of days, notice went out that the Winona Republican Herald stopped reporting on what happened to Lena Weinberg.
Okay.
And you got to remember, we were really connected to the New York moneyed interests. That lumber industry brought in a lot of money, as did all the single women of the lumber companies, because they couldn't breed male heirs for whatever reason. They'd have one and they'd die. Laird's lost one. Norton's.
Yeah.
Norton's lost two, their two oldest sons. Henry Huff himself lost Owen and Wilson, and I think a daughter. So, death, kind of hung over this town. Mm-hmm. And they didn't know what it was. Some people talked about it was the Native Americans whose, graves we dug up. And
Sure.
Their spirits rose, and they came back to, nobody knew.
Yeah.
Nobody knew. So a lot of the townies would say, "Oh, it's karma." It's just, at that time there was a real, wage. You either had money or you were poor.
Yeah.
So that was the basis. It's kind of the basis of the book I'm working on now.
Okay.
We're going to call it Lenaville.
Lenaville.
I think. Names always change by the time I get done. About halfway through the next one. And it'll be about, as I walk around town, trying to figure out who killed Lena.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And so you talk to, you talk to all sorts of different people.
Yeah. One of my favorite things that I love every fall that Winona does is the cemetery walk.
Yeah.
I love the Voices of the Past thing. And so anytime I go to that, because I like the history of Winona. I don't know for what reason I do. So it sounds like you do too. And I don't even know what the reason is. I just love listening about things that happened. I remember one year it was about like businesses. So we learned about Blados and all that kind of stuff. And they were really neat to listen to.
Jonelle and the crew at the Winona History Center are so good. You know what they did this year? Jonelle and I have been talking for a long time, and she does a great job, but they can't really use my work because I'm a little creative.
Sure.
They want to keep it. They want to keep it right, kind of right there. But on the credits for the writings, even though I wrote nothing for them, they put my name on that thing.
Okay.
It made me feel really,
Sure.
It made me feel really. Our history is important.
I think so.
The building, and we need the old buildings. What your dad did with saving the Winona Hotel down there.
Yeah, the Kensington now.
Kensington.
Yep.
That was cool.
Yeah.
That would have been an eyesore to put up an aluminum building.
Yeah, it's a historical landmark, so you couldn't do much with it. But it was really neat inside for sure.
Oh yeah, and so I do, then I try when I'm writing, I try and bring Blado's Donuts in and go back to the Gerdes family and the Malky family.
Yep.
And you start doing, like that. It's interesting. Like across the street, you've got the Lake House.
Yeah.
And there was a murder there, and
just literally across the street there.
That greenhouse.
The greenhouse. Okay.
The greenhouse.
Now it's a rental property.
Yeah, it was kind of then too, because the lights moved out, and he had a worker. I forget what her name was, but he turned it over to her.
Okay.
She was like a nurse and took care of all sorts of different things. Turned it over to her, and a priest from the La Crosse diocese lived in there, and he only, you can imagine a pension from the Catholic diocese back then.
Sure.
I mean, the boy was scraping bottom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so she started taking care of him and her jealous husband.
Okay.
That didn't sit too well. And so one day, night, Sunday after, I don't know, he popped him.
Oh, okay.
Our Winona papers are fantastic because they wrote everything.
Yep.
And about 6 months later, the guy got off the murder charge and was up north, and he took his own life. But the Winona paper was, and I think they had a little axe to grind. They loved writing anything they could about the grungy East End of Winona.
Sure.
And because those people were poor.
Yep.
The Polish people who first came to this town, they were hungry, they struggled for everything. And They built those little houses right next to each other. And,
Yeah, the shotgun houses.
Shotgun houses,
Yep.
yeah. And so it's amazing. And if you were to talk to some people from 100 years ago and they told you Polish people, Peerless Chain and Fastenal and Gostomski's Heating and Ventilating Company, and you look at the amount of Polish people today in Winona who are heads of companies, heads of corporations, it's pretty amazing.
Yep.
I mean, Winona's amazing the way it is. We got Fortune 500 companies
Yep,
in
we
this
do.
small little company, and that isn't. Most towns would be happy with one. They'd be a one-horse town. Like Red Wing's kind of a one-horse town with Red Wing Shoe.
Yep.
And they've expanded that a little bit. But up here, how many we got? I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
people-
Fastenal's a big one.
yeah.
And then you got Peerless Chain
Chain.
and stuff of that nature.
Been
Yeah.
a long, long time. A lot of history. So, Lena Weinberg is kind of the topic of my next book.
Okay, so that's the topic. And now I talked to a lady, and she said that you have some good ghost stories from Winona. Is that true?
Well, some people call them ghosts.
Yeah.
I just say I kind of live in the world, and maybe it's my schizophrenia,
Sure.
but I live in the world beyond the seeing.
Okay. Yeah,
You
you
know
said
what?
you see dead people.
I've seen dead people. I
Okay.
told you about the one of the witch.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. In 1977, I was locked up on a psychiatric unit.
Okay.
They had me on Thorazine, Stelazine, and Haldol. I mean, they're horse pills, right? Mm-hmm. They're made to make you drool.
Okay.
And, I mean, you walk like a zombie. It's like a 200-pound weight.
Yeah.
A 200-pound weight around your neck. And I'd been there, so that was the first admission. I went there 3 times, 6 weeks, 4 weeks, and 2 weeks. And I told this story, by the way, at the Storytellers Festival
Okay.
one night in front of a big crowd. And
Where's that located at? In Winona?
it went on up at St. Mary's. It's really, we just spent an hour, and you got storytellers from all over the world. The best story we got last year, 2 years ago, last year and 2 years ago, we got the world's championship liar,
Really?
Bill Lepp.
Okay.
And I tell you what, he's amazing. And we get these old storytellers, old black storytellers, some of them, and they do get their chanting and they're singing. And they take you away. They take you away. It's really a cool thing. But in 77, I was crashing in bed about 7 o'clock at night, and I was out. And usually once they give you those pills, you're dead to the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're gone. So in the middle of the night, I hear this noise at the end of my bed, and I kind of come creeping to, thinking, so who's pilfering my pockets? I mean, I'm a schizophrenic. I ain't got no money. I mean, I'm talking quarters in my pocket and 2 single crunched up dollar bills in my wallet. You know what I mean? Stealing what little I got.
Yeah.
So I kind of start coming to, and I start balling up my fist, and down there at the end of the bed was just this kind of funny light. He says, when you write, use small words. Write like you're there and give meaning. And it was gone. So I got up the next morning, and I said, what the hell was that? And heard my dad's roar. My old man was a Marine,
Okay.
And you know how they can be.
Uh-huh.
Charge that hill.
Yep.
I mean, he said, and I hear him saying, charge that hill. Go up it. But that night, I said to myself, well, maybe those voices ain't just up here. Maybe they're real. Maybe they're behind the seeing. So I confronted them, faced up to them. That's when I started getting better.
Okay.
And I had a couple relapses. I didn't like taking those pills.
No, I know. You said something made you feel like a zombie, basically.
Zombie. I didn't like taking
Yeah.
those pills, but at that time in my life, I needed those pills. I could see that now.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to get knocked on my butt, which is what they did.
Okay.
And so I'd go off the pills, and then I'd end up right in because my wiring wasn't right. And then went in the last time, got it all taken care of. I mean, I took Rorschach's. I had my head looked at. I had took MMPIs left and right, all the things that happened. For me, and I'm sure it's similar to a jail cell, you hear that metal door clanging,
Mm-hmm.
it runs right through you.
Sure.
You say to yourself, I can't get out. You're trapped. And you gotta put it together to talk to doctors into letting you come back out.
Yeah.
Because but it helped form. Aren't they good tasting?
I love it. It's really good. It's easy. I'm almost done with the first one. So yeah.
I mean, and then that brought me out. I was going to school out of St. Mary's, and I was out 3 o'clock in the morning once because dead people like talking to me at 2 in the morning,
3 a.m.
It's quiet.
Yeah. I heard that's when, if you wake up in the middle of the night, there's possibly a dead person that woke you up for a reason.
Well,
between 3 and 4.
Science girl, who I love dearly, she's my partner. She's starting to see him, I think.
Okay.
And she tells her, "Will you quit inviting him in the house?"
You're inviting them. What'd you do? Put out the THC filters?
I
or
don't
what?
know. They just seem to gravitate towards me, So I'm 3 o'clock in the morning. I find myself on the steps of St. Mary's Hall. And that's when I met Father Lachey, and that's when he would have been my third dead person. And He talked about shooting Bishop Heffron. Boom, boom, boom. And he said, well, that Bishop Heffron, he wouldn't let me go back to France. I wanted to go back to France because my nephew was being ordained as a priest over there. I wanted to go back. And Heffron wouldn't let him go. He wanted his own parish here in Winona County. Heffron wouldn't let him go because he had him teaching reading. He was a smart guy. And he finally got frustrated in the dead of winter or whatever. And, winters are hard up here for some people.
They are. They have been, well, last year wasn't so bad, but the ones
cold,
before.
But where they're cloudy.
I know.
And
depressing.
we're so sensitive. Yeah, we're so sensitive to the sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said that's what caused him and he was the last one. I went to visit him at St. Peter's State Hospital. Probably about 3 years ago. I couldn't get into the cemetery because I was in the spring and all muddy and stuff like that.
Sure.
But
you went and visited him where?
St. Peter's State Hospital. That's where.
Oh.
The church wouldn't let him go.
Okay.
They committed him, and the trial took about 30 seconds because Bishop Heffron came to and it was done. They sent him to St. Peter's State Hospital, and he never left.
Okay.
Until he came back to Winona to talk to me.
Sure.
And but that was the last one. And I guess the test of a writer isn't so much what I see, that I see dead people, but it's if I'm writing and I get you to see dead people.
Right. Yeah.
That's a sign of a good writer.
That is. Yeah.
And that's what I hope. That's what I hope to attain. That's what I hope to do when I write.
Sure.
And I look at it, not that I'm messing with you, but I'm trying to get you, my reader, into a different place.
Sure.
And most people follow me pretty religiously. They like my stuff.
Yep.
They like what, like you.
Yep. I'm listening. I'm intrigued.
Everybody likes what. Well, I got a book for you.
All right. What do you got?
Well, I brought a sample of all my books.
Okay. How many books have you written?
4. I'm about halfway through my 5th.
Okay.
And I'm working on a play.
Oh.
I've never done a play.
Sure. That'd be different, wouldn't it? The
I
writing
write
style?
about. Is it
harder?
It's just awkward. It's just getting my body to see it like that. I'm going to do one on the Morgan block.
Okay.
Now, that Morgan block was before your time.
Yeah, and that's where Morgan Jewelers is, right?
No. It is where the strip mall is in downtown Winona.
Okay, gotcha.
That was at one time 3-story brick buildings all
Okay.
the way around. There was the Simpson block, and then there was the Morgan block. And the Morgan block in its dying days was a little bit rough. It was, the windows weren't the nicest. The bricks had gaps. I mean, it was dying, right?
Okay.
Buildings only got so many years if you don't really maintain them.
That's right.
And So I write the story of the people who lived up on the second and third floor, their balconies. And there's names like Stanley Dearman. Most people knew him as Chinky.
Okay.
They're just character composites of a lot of different people.
That were actually from here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Gone, some of them a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so they get telling the story, not me, not me. They tell the story, and they get arguing, and they get, because people had a rough light sometimes when they get arguing, they get
Sure.
really arguing. So I'm working on that, and then I'm working on the Lenoville story. But this book, my first book.
Okay.
Here, this one's yours.
This one's mine.
This one's yours. I made it out to Brews and Crew.
Okay.
Brews and Cruise.
So for those who are watching or listening, it's called Across the Great Divide by obviously Merle Hanson. And this one is been made out to me specifically. If you're watching, you can see he signed it, put the date on there and everything. Because it's the 11th of November right now when we're recording this, to Brews and Cruise. And I have a book to read now. So what is this book about then?
Well, if you read that back page, it's about my journey into schizophrenia. And, I used to drink a lot of Jack Daniels.
Okay.
Jack Daniels was my thing.
That was your go-to.
But I drank Jack Daniels, and I'd start feeling things on my insides. It was doing something to me. And then I found weed back in the 70s
Okay.
would bring those people to life.
Okay.
So this is the story about me walking around town running into people through a schizophrenic mind.
Okay. Awesome.
And it's available all over town, bookstores, retail shops, Heart's Desire, Rusty Bucket, Clara Louise, Historical Society, Paperbacks and Pieces,
Sure.
Chapter 2 books.
So this is everywhere in Winona.
I've tried to get.
Yeah.
I mean, some of my books have sold really well. Ageless Winona is still
I've seen the Ageless Winona one
that is
all over the
still
place.
selling, and I've had people who normally don't. Rito, Bruce Reed.
I know. I know from YouTube.
You wouldn't normally call him a reader, right?
I probably wouldn't know.
He comes up to me. I go, Rito, as I'm driving over there by Market Tap, and he comes running up to my car, and he says, "You write like you were there, and you were there, because it was just like yesterday."
Yeah.
And you get a compliment from a guy like Rito, and it kind of hits you right here.
Sure.
Because not only intellects like my stuff, but regular folks like townies like my stuff, and that's our bond.
Yeah.
That's our stories.
Well, yeah. I mean, you do a great job just telling me stories here in person, which you said you'd done some storytelling at St. Mary's and stuff like that. Now, the question I have is, did you draw this then? Do you draw?
Oh, no.
Someone else did that for you?
No, I can't draw.
Okay.
In fact, I can't write with my pencil. That was done by a remarkable, I don't know if you know Mark Casper.
I think I do.
Mark, for years, worked in Rochester for one of the heating and ventilating or plumbing companies.
Okay.
Just recently retired. And I said, how did you carry around that artwork all these years while doing plumbing? And he said, I don't know, it just started to come out. And so I asked him, I said, hey, Mark, you think you can, because he's shown up at a lot of my readings.
Sure.
You think you can draw something, put on the cover? And sure enough, I got the original up in my house. Mm-hmm. And I said, we went back and forth, what should be on it? And I said, well, why don't you paint something with a guy on clouds smoking a J, right?
That's exactly what this is.
and he did it.
Yeah.
That's his wife Judy's hand. And
okay.
And I think it's my best book.
It's great. Yeah, it looks awesome. I've seen this everywhere.
Yeah.
I know I have around town.
Yeah, and it's as I read through it for first edition collectors, because we'll probably have a second edition at some point.
Okay.
I found a misspacing in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I'll tell you how that works. This Portraits is my first book.
Okay.
I wrote this, and there's a story in here. It's out of print now, mind you.
Okay.
Out of print now. 2 cops came knocking at my door, making sure I was okay.
Wow.
Yeah, no shit. And they kept knocking my door, and they were good. I said, that's some good piece of writing, because we were, when they started to do Levee Park with Frank Pomeroy and Mark Peterson, and I decided I'd write something about one of my relatives. And he had popped some blue pills down there in the 30s, I think it was the 30s. Never saw tomorrow. So, and so this book, which originally retailed for $13 on Amazon nowadays, $45.
Holy smokes.
I mean, it's just a cheap. I don't know who's paying $45 for this, but there's some good stories. Or they're obsessed or they want a full collection of Hanson.
Okay.
So
a full collection would consist of these 4 books currently.
Books so far,
and then a 5th one coming.
This was a lot about the east end of Winona.
Tales from the River Bottoms.
Yeah, it was shorter than I thought it was going to be, but I struggle with Polish names sometimes, especially remembering them.
Just remember the end ski.
Yeah, exactly. And they come out. So I was probably more creative than most with this, but it talks a little bit about the Polish experience. There's some really good stories in here about the Lubinsky family.
Okay.
And the owns the Rusty Bucket, and they had an uncle, and he came back from the Korean War, and the story of his time, not only in the war and marching in Korea.
Sure.
He was a POW, but when he came back, the changes he noticed in life, and there's some really good stories in here, and. Then Ageless Winona, of course.
Ageless Winona, I've seen that one everywhere.
That's been the bestseller. And people like that cover because...
It's ice fishing.
It's ice fishing.
Everyone knows that.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And I'm sure there's been some people who've looked at that, well, is that my grandfather, or is that...
Yeah, sure.
Is that kind of because,
It's quite possible it was.
It's possible it was. People like that. People like that being outside.
Was that your first one that you did then, Ageless Winona?
No, Portraits was my first.
Portraits was your first, and then Ageless Winona is your best-selling one so far.
Yeah, so far, that's sold quite a...
Can I see that one? I know I've seen this one around town everywhere, too.
Yeah.
So this one is, what is this one about then?
Yeah, it's about a guy who kind of walks around town, talks to dead people.
All right.
There's a lot of dead people that have passed away in Winona,
I suppose, yeah.
But, it's not only that, but it gives you a sense of Winona and its history.
Yeah.
And it tells you a little bit. I like to write about people who had life fall on their heads.
Sure.
What
do you mean by life fall on their heads?
Early deaths, a kid die, and
Sure.
Things that didn't work like they planned. Not that life is. I mean, you St. Martin's guys are special. I'll give you that. But most of us 18-year-olds had no idea we were going to. I had never entered my mind I'd be sitting here talking to you when I was 18 years old about dead people and schizophrenia. And all that. I mean,
well, this platform has opened up a lot of things for people just to come on and talk and tell their story about past things. I love it.
It's so great, Chris. People want history. It's part of who we are.
Yeah.
And that other stuff ain't. It's this. It's who we are.
Yep.
It's part of our myth. It's part of our thinking.
So when you're writing, then. How did you get into it? Did you just say, man, I got things that are in here and I just want to put them out there?
I always wanted to be a writer. Even a little kid. I read a lot. I was a reader. And, but I could never get the words out. I couldn't get them out through my fingertips.
Sure.
And I just couldn't get them out. And I didn't really start writing until my dad died. When Dad died, there was like a lifting.
Yeah.
Because I don't know why, but Dad and I, we didn't fight, but we sure didn't get along. Yeah. We'd walk in the room, I could feel my hair, and I love my dad. I could feel the hair sticking up on the back of my neck.
Yeah.
We were Hansons, and we would take opposite sides of the way. I mean, the poor guy liked the Vikings. And I was a Packer fan.
Oh, geez. There's a real big divide.
And, we see baseball players. He'd like some baseball players, and I didn't like him at all. So now he's gone. I got to tell you, we get along much better.
I bet you do. It's a one-sided fight.
I get out to that cemetery, and him and I will sit down, and I'll bring out something to drink and smoke or whatever, and we'll be just kind of letting go.
Sure.
I kind of wish that had happened earlier, but it just wasn't in the cards. It just wasn't in the cards. And then so after he passed, I started writing, and I sent some letters to the editor. I wrote one time, letter to the editor, and I took the perspective of sitting in the confessional booth.
Oh, really?
To a confession. And, hasn't showed up. I don't know whatever happened to that. It was in the Winona Daily News. And they stopped printing my stuff, as did the Winona Post.
Oh. Well, now you're on here telling it.
And so I wrote this story about a confession. I mean, I never did it. I can't imagine they're too complicated. They're mostly the same, right?
Yeah.
And about a week later, there was a response in the Winona Daily News.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. And she was, I don't remember her name, and I'm sorry if I offended you.
Whoever you are.
But she just ripped the Diocese of Winona for writing about, or for revealing.
Oh. So they thought someone from there wrote it.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I guess they probably did.
Yeah.
And I don't mean any harm. I don't have any bad intent. I'm just a simple townie who has a gift for writing, and I try and write. I mean, I write every day. I write. I never know when I don't write. I
Type.
I peck.
Okay, you hunt and peck. Hunt and peck.
I don't know where I'm going when I start. I don't do an outline like they taught us in school. I just start talking, and I just start talking. And I'll write through it. And I'm getting better now. It used to take me the longest time. I'd have to write 4, 5, 6 revisions, and I'd be drained. And now I can write it. And it'll take me just a couple times, twist a couple words, and once I get it out, then I can stretch it a little bit, and you kind of weave it, pull it apart, and you open it up, and it's a really good feeling to finish a book. It's a really good feeling to finish a story.
Sure.
And it's a really good feeling to have people read your story and hear your story and be interested in your story and you try and capture some of that Winona myth we all us Winona guys, gals got running through us.
When you say you write every day, how do you know when you're going to start doing a book? Do you now I'm going to start, or all of a sudden you're just writing, you go, hey, this could be a good book?
Well, I start writing a story, and I don't really have a plot, and the next thing I know is I write another story, and then I write another story, and all of a sudden I got 30, 40, 50 stories, and then I got to try to weave them together, and then I'll go back and I'll read them, and then I'll add on. And then I got a really good editor and publisher, Terry Karsten.
And they're from town?
Terry owns Wagon Bridge Publishing. She's
oh,
from
yeah,
town.
I saw that on the back.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she puts them together because I just write.
Sure.
I don't know where I'm going.
Right, yeah.
I mean, and she kind of weaves them into stories so that they're coherent and divides the chapters up and puts them in order.
Okay. And so everything that you do is pretty much locally sourced here. The artist, the publishing, you.
Well, yeah.
Pretty much.
THC soda I can get here. I got to go out of state for that other stuff.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah.
The writing fuel, we'll call that. The writing fuel.
The writing fuel.
Yeah.
This stuff chills my bones. The other stuff triggers my mind, my memories, and I don't really drive when I don't drive when I'm buzzed up.
Yeah.
Science girl drive me around town.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Because you really slow down. And, I remember, I was never so scared in my life. It was 77, and I was up at St. Mary's, and I had too much weed in the back of my car. I was bringing it into town, and the worst thing was I was stoned. I shouldn't have been driving, but when you're 18 years old, you do a lot of dumb things.
Oh, yeah.
Dumb things. So I'm driving down the highway, and all of a sudden I noticed I was going about 25 miles an hour. And I was still, aware of what that isn't cool. Next thing I know, I come down Huff Street there, and I take a right where Quick Trip is now.
Yep.
And I notice a cop tailing me. Whew. Your heart. Your heart starts beating. So I'm going, what am I going to do? I was toast,
Mm-hmm.
So then I drive down there and go by Lowry Field, and then I take a left on Main. I see the cathedral. The cop's tailing me. He's just waiting for. I'm a good driver when I'm stoned, but I'm really slow. I stay on my side of the road, and I don't do that no more. But I go into. I see the cathedral. I roll up my '69 Volkswagen Bug because that's what I drove.
Sure.
I roll it right up into the front of the cathedral, the Sacred Heart, and I go trucking up those steps. I was going to church, and the cop car just drove right by me. So, Mr. Policeman, I thank you for giving me a chance.
Yeah.
And when if there's one job I couldn't do, and there's a lot of jobs I can't do, fix anything or do anything like that. I'm just a real klutz, but I could not be a police officer. Not in a million years.
Sure.
Because I'd probably be dead, or I just can't do it. Just like I can't officiate a basketball game because I'm helping kids up or stuff like that.
Sure, yeah.
I was a coach for a long time. I coached all those Caledonia high school teams that won the state tournament. I've coached a couple pro football players. The Caledonia girls basketball team.
Okay.
In fact, that was the first time I met you. You don't remember it. Your dad brought you down there to St. Mary's grade school gym for a free throw shooting contest.
Oh, yeah. I used to do that all the time.
Yeah. And then I saw Rich. I hadn't seen your dad in a long time. And he's a good dude. I really liked your Uncle Bob, too, because Goodview Baseball, you played seventh grade. You were 7 years old. You played with 12 years old. So you learned the game of baseball. They put you out in right field when you were 7 years old, right?
Yeah, sure.
And then as you grew older, you would move around the field. And I always liked to pitch. I was a pitcher, and Bob was a catcher. And Bob kind of took me under his wing.
Yeah.
He was a good catcher. He was a smart man. And, you remember stuff. You remember stuff like Mrs. Shabilsky. And I remember I come back to Goodview for a tournament one time, and my kids were all young. And there was Mrs. Shabilsky. She was sitting in her lawn chair and watching the game. I almost start crying. I introduced her to my kids. Tears start coming. There are people in your life who really make a difference.
That's right, yeah.
And they all don't wear suits. They all don't wear ties.
No.
But they're regular folk.
Yeah, people usually that teach you are the ones that make the biggest impact on you sometimes.
Teachers. I want to thank you for teaching because
thank you.
Yeah, teachers make teachers are. I look back now, and I was just talking to the president of Winona State yesterday, the day before. We were texting back and forth, and I said, I'm still thankful for those old school marms because we went to Phelps, which was on the Winona State campus, and those teachers. I'm 66 years old. That's 55 years ago.
Sure.
60 years ago, are still with me today. They're still with me today.
Yep.
And I walk out of St. Mary, I go walking through St. Mary's College. I guess it's a university now, but habits are hard to change. And I go through there, and I had a rough time out there because that's when the schizophrenia set in.
Okay.
And I still remember those brothers asking me questions and this and that and the other thing. Part of my foreman. Teachers are part of who we become.
Right. Yep.
And it's a really, really important thing. Really important thing.
So when you're writing a book, how long does it take from start to finish on these for you? Are you like months, years? I mean, I don't even know what it takes.
I'm getting faster.
Okay.
I always say portraits took me 50 years to write
Sure.
because, that's the first one. This one I put out in a little over a year, somewhere like that. I start writing about a topic.
Okay.
This was here probably a year and a half. And then Across the Great Divide is about a year.
Okay.
So in Lenaville, the one I'm working on now and is halfway done, I'm trying to get, I want to get up to about 250 pages, and so I'm thinking another 6 months I'll have that one ready.
Okay.
So
it takes maybe about a year-ish now
yeah,
for you?
it seems to take about a year.
Okay.
And so far, I'm really lucky, Chris. Winona hasn't run out of stories to tell.
No, I know.
It's really a remarkable town.
Yeah.
It's got a long history and a lot of interesting history, a lot of interesting people. And most people say, well, you're going to read a history book. Well, this happened in 1858, and the next thing you know, you're nodding off.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to attach stories to
Right.
history, and that's many of the people I mentioned in history were once here. They were here, and I'm thinking, they talk to me, but I'm thinking they kind of like being remembered.
Yeah, well, who wouldn't want their legacy to be remembered,
Yeah.
Well, at least for one thing.
Yeah. And so, that's kind of what I do. And, I share it. I share my stories on Facebook. And a lot of people read those. They get edited when I put them in a book.
Mm-hmm.
They get put in order when I put them in a book.
So everything's out of order when you're kind of doing it.
John Hyatt, when he was playing with the Homers, or the Goners,
Okay.
had a song about shit flying in every direction. Guess what? That's what this writer does.
Sure.
Maybe not all writers do.
Okay.
But I get up in the morning, I read a little bit, and then I start writing.
Okay.
And that's my gig.
Sure.
And
So if someone wants to buy these, you can find them in Winona, or you can go on Amazon?
you can go on Amazon.
Okay.
I think we got them priced at $15.50 on Amazon.
Okay, so it's not bad at all.
Not bad at all. And I decided that there's some corporate greed going through the system right now,
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason. So I decided I was going to fight that. And my other books are more expensive, but this one I said, you know what? I make enough money on it at 15 or whatever, and I'm okay with that. And so Amazon will cut me a check. I don't have to do inventory.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I sell them in the store, I got to carry inventory, and that inventory, ask any business person, is expensive to carry.
Sure.
And so they're retailers throughout town, and sometimes I wish I had a distribution arm. I don't. I'm just a little guy, and I could submit these books to big time publishing houses, but I don't like their vibe. You know what I mean? I'm
okay.
a regular guy. I don't, and Terry and I have such a good relationship.
Yep.
That how's a New York City boy understand what's going on in Winona, Minnesota?
Yeah.
They'll be cutting this and cutting that, and who is this and who is that, and
Mm-hmm. You don't know how to end up.
And so I'm comfortable in my spot. I love Winona. And I think right now what we got going on in downtown Winona is some of the coolest stuff.
I know they're really starting to do things around downtown now. They're trying to gear it towards more of us local people that are around here. Like, I love going to the brewery. I like going to Peter's Beer Garden. But now there's restaurants popping up all over the place.
Good restaurants, too. It's an exciting time to be in Winona, because when I was your age or younger, Winona was dead downtown.
Mm-hmm.
It was college students in dark stores.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's empty storefronts everywhere. It ain't
Right.
actually, Winona's probably better than most downtowns because we have people in them. But it's really, I mean, I think it's really, really important to support local business, local people.
Do you have one story in Winona that is just your absolute favorite, or something very funny about it? You had a good one?
Well, I think I tell this story at Peter's Beer Garden, and it involves Lena Weinberg.
Mm-hmm.
And talks about the early days of the Huff Hotel in Winona. And the partner, I'll shorten it up, but the partner of Colonel Cockrell was E.D. Williams. And came from Cincinnati. And Colonel Cockrell did his main, he liked to sit around the bar and drink bourbons at the end of the bar. That's how he ran the business.
Sure.
But Williams had his nose in a lot of stuff, liveries and the first gas company that came into place. He was also, he liked taking advantage of women.
Okay.
There are people out there like that. You know what I mean? It was
Yeah,
the times.
Yep.
And the ladies who worked for Lena didn't like him at all. And one time, I think it was 1872. Me and dates are really, really. 1872. Williams made a play for Lena. Got her in the back room, and Well, Lena, she was a fighter, man. She spat tacks. This was a short, tough German lady. She couldn't hardly speak English. And the boys at the Huff Hotel bar still swear to the day. But Lena wound up, he was moving in on her, wound up and grabbed McWilliams in the nose. She didn't let go right away. She squeezed, and they say you could still hear the echoes of Williams screaming in the old Huff Hotel. And so we were down there. We were in the Kensington, Joe and I, not too long ago. And I was listening. I didn't hear it because that basement, some of that maybe, I don't know. But I was listening to see if I could hear the echoes of Williams screaming. Now, only a schizophrenic, right?
Sure.
Could still be hearing stuff from 150 years ago. But, it's interesting to think about. So that story, I've told that a couple times at Peter's Beer Garden, public library. We do public library stuff too.
Okay.
And people seem to enjoy that. There used to be a bar in Winona called the Mississippi House.
Okay.
It's kind of behind the movie theater on the other side of the tracks.
Sure.
There was a town down there at one time. We get flooded every spring. But the Mississippi House was just one step above the Hobo Jungle, which was down there towards Maltrop and Fibright and down there.
Okay.
Down there. The Minnesota Art Museum. It was all part of the Hobo Jungle.
The Hobo Jungle.
Yeah, we had a Hobo Jungle because we had all these railroad lines coming in.
Sure.
And it was the 1800s and stuff like that. And so people had to get around. They had to transport, and they'd hop on board, and they always knew they could come to Winona. And you talk to different people. I was talking to Bob Kierland. He said, I hadn't thought about that for years, but he remembers now these bums coming up, and he grew up on 175 East 4th.
Okay.
And he remembers these bums coming, knocking on the back door and asking for a butter sandwich or a lard sandwich.
Sure.
And I'll get back to Charlie. Charlie Beam came here in 1876 looking for work. He took a job bartending at the Mississippi house. True story. True story. He fell in love with the owner's daughter. And, but Charlie started drinking too much. Sometimes you can drink too much.
And there's times, yeah.
And people knew Charlie was going, something was wrong with this guy when he grabbed a guy one night who was in a bar asking for a drink. And he bit his ear off. Seriously, right in the Winona paper. Bit his ear off. And
It wasn't Mike Tyson, was it?
Well, it might have been a cousin.
Okay.
And I mean, it was in the Winona paper all over the place. And, the cops were down at the Mississippi house on a regular basis. Well, Charlie really started to kind of lose it, and he'd gotten himself a gun. His wife, Anna, had filed divorce papers, and that just didn't happen in the 1880s, Charlie wasn't happy. He started stalking her. One night, they were at the Philharmonic Hall, which is where the Eagles Club was.
Okay.
Huge building. That's where Frederick Douglass in 1872 spoke. 4,000 Winonans came down to listen to him.
That's cool.
Yeah. And they had a big party down there. Winona, especially in the winter, we got to have places where we can socialize.
That's right.
We will go stir crazy.
I agree with that.
So Charlie started following her around, and he followed her down to that. They were going through the divorce proceedings. He followed her down to the Philharmonic Hall, and didn't take his eyes off her, making her uncomfortable. And she talked about that in the newspaper. So they got done, and they left. They turned left onto Franklin Street, and they turned left, and they're going down 3rd Street. And right there by Said Irish Pub downtown.
McCune's? Well, it used to be. There's Lucky's.
No, this further towards Franklin.
Oh, Mulligan's?
Mulligan's.
There you go.
Mulligan's. It used to be called the Gasthaus. I mean, the Burmeisters owned it.
Okay.
It was a restaurant, and they also owned Ed's No Name Bar,
Mm-hmm.
which used to be the Burmeister Hotel.
Okay.
There's still Burmeisters in town. And right there in front of
Mulligan's?
Mulligan's.
Yeah.
Told you, I got a hard time with names.
Yeah.
Right there in front of Mulligan's, he pulls out this gun, shoots Anna, scrapes her off the top of the head, right?
Jeez.
She's bleeding like a pig. They go inside the building, they tape her up. 5 minutes later, he had turned back around, went up Franklin, went up a half a block, pulled in right behind where the Eagles Club is now, used to be the Philharmonic Hall.
Popped himself, yeah.
Died with a $1.31 in his pocket.
Ooh.
They wanted to know where to bury him, how to do with him. Sent a letter to his folks. They responded back, "We don't know what's wrong. Had gone wrong with Charlie. We won't be attending the funeral."
Oh, wow.
So somewhere out there in paupers, unmarked graves, is Charlie Beebe.
Okay.
And, so some of that is being put into the next book.
Okay.
Where did he get the gun, and did he work for Lena? And so there's all sorts of suspense. There's a Stovall that just disappeared after a fire,
And this is coming up in the new book.
it's all coming up in the new
Nice.
book. Joe and I are going to do in February, if I ever get my act together. Joe's ready. It's me, and we're a team with a musician, and we're going to perform down at the Parlor.
Oh, that'd be cool.
And we're going to call it Scoundrels of Winona.
Scoundrels of Winona.
Yeah, and we're going to tell stories about some of the early Scoundrels of Winona.
Sure.
With a little accompaniment in the back. So people have really shown up at the library. They show up at Peter's Beer Garden. They used to show up at the athletic club we were there, but the acoustics there are really hard because there's a lot of activity going on.
Yeah.
And so Winona's been really receptive to storytelling, and we hope to continue to do it because it's just what we do.
Yeah, it's fun for you.
Yeah.
Well, so as we're winding down here, you're working on the 2 new ones. What's the one that we were just talking about going to be called?
Well, right now I'm focused on calling it Lenaville.
Lenaville.
Because the townies called this Lenaville.
Okay.
And most people called it Winona, but the real low grades like me, dirt balls,
Sure.
we called it Lenaville. We thought she ruled the town.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna do. I'm starting to work on a play with Ken McCullough, and we're in the really early stages. Lynn Nankinville.
What's it going to be called?
Well,
Or you don't know yet?
We don't know. We haven't titled yet. 'Cause
Okay.
we have to put some nice, funky name on it.
Yep.
I think it's going to be about the characters who we've chosen to live in the Morgan block, and the second floor balconies
Sure.
and old clotheslines in the back, and all that kind of stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then, when I write, there's we may do one later on with Lucille. Lucille's one of my favorite characters.
Okay.
And she has a seat at the high and low. It's second from the end. Her dead boyfriend sits next to her, called Tommy Lee.
Okay.
And so she just chewed me out one. I was just a younger person, and I went over and talked to her. She said, "What are you staring at me for? Tommy Lee? Are you hitting on me? Tommy Lee is my man." And they look over at the stool next to her. There ain't nobody there. But you write and you put people into these situations, and they just come out. So
Then you got to make them come to life.
got to make them come to life.
And then this is your newest one. You just gifted me, Across the Great Divide. And,
Yep.
and you can find that any local store roughly around town.
I put them in. If anybody wants to carry it, I'm cool with that. I do. It's really sharing Winona's history.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing. I think people should read it. I think they'll enjoy it. Mm-hmm. I think it'll make them think. If you read one of my books and you haven't had a thought, you're brain dead.
Okay, because I'm going to read this now.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's my story. You can always text me or whatever, and if you got questions about a character or something, or think somebody, maybe that is.
Sure.
Sometimes I don't like saying anything bad about people.
Mm-hmm.
So if stuff happened that wasn't so kosher, I'll change the names.
Okay.
I think Winona's heritage should be something you hold proud.
Well, the thing is, though, we watch movies and they're never based in your town that you're in. I mean, they're usually Los Angeles or New York or something. So you could read this book and still enjoy it from Winona's aspect, even if you've never visited here.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
I think it's good advertising for Winona.
Mm-hmm. That too.
I mean,
The Miami of Minnesota.
Yeah. I mean, people. I've had some of my readers come visit, and I've gotten together with them.
Really?
Yeah,
It's really cool.
People coming to Winona to see who these people are.
See what Merle's talking about.
Yeah, and so every house has a story attached to it.
Sure.
Every person has a story attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Winona could do it up really good with GPS and stuff like that. We could be clicking at a house and we could hear the history of that house.
Yeah.
Who the people were, and we spend a lot of time looking at our phones.
Yeah, we do.
It's modern technology, right? It's the way. Well, when they're walking downtown, how nice would it be if they clicked on a building and they could say, this was this, this was this, this was this.
Yeah.
It was owned by this. Because even in those rundown buildings down there, they were once home to somebody's dreams.
Sure.
And oftentimes the owners would live upstairs. And so we can't forget those people.
That's right.
They're regular folks. And they all got stones.
Yep.
They got stones out there in the necropolis. So, Winona has some great cemeteries too.
Yeah, they do. And so like I said, I love the cemetery walk. We love going to Woodlawn. It's really cool. There's so much history there, like you were just saying to me.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we're fortunate that the really wealthy people in town used to put their stories in the paper, so we would know, and they'd have their society pages in the old Winona papers that, well, they traveled around the world. The Hortons did, or the Nortons did, or the Lairds did, or the Stovall's did, or well, the Stovall's didn't. They were two black businessmen in Winona.
Sure.
And they owned 6 buildings down here.
Wow.
And one of them disappeared after a fire. The Billings Tavern, which is out on 5th and Ewing by Evie's Corner.
Okay.
There was a complex out there. It was owned by Verrazano Simpson.
Okay.
Verrazano was one of the scoundrels of Winona history. He was partners with John Ludwig in the Ludwig Bank and set up railroad boards. He developed a block that's getting torn down now between the library and the courthouse. Mm-hmm. So it's all fenced off. I assume that it's going to get plowed under. That was one of the first developments in Winona, and Verrazano Simpson was the man behind it.
Okay.
William Wyndham lived out of the corner. House is gone now. William Wyndham was Secretary of Treasury, presidential candidate who got votes at the presidential convention, 18 whatever, I don't know. He lived in the Christensen House, or the foundation of the Christensen House.
Okay.
But these guys, I mean, you're talking some of the most powerful, wealthy people in Winona.
Yeah.
Then you had that dirtbag, Henry Huff. People didn't like him. Henry ripped too many people off. People used to say that, thought that Henry Huff would be thrown in the Mississippi River for the catfish to feed on. And he left Winona pretty early. And then he went down to Chicago. Was living in Chicago, lost everything in the Chicago fire. So when he came back up here, and he was a big Mason, established the bylaws for the Mason, nobody knew him. Nobody knew that little prick. And I say that because he had that, going through the history center, they used to have an exhibit which showed his handwriting.
Uh-huh.
Oh my. Delicate and just
Very fine.
very fine.
Yeah.
Not any rough-hewn Winona that I know. I mean, we're a special bunch.
Yeah.
And
I get a question for you, and this is one of my last questions I have is, if someone were to research Winona, who do you think would be a famous name that would stand out for someone from all the characters that have been around here in past, present? Who is someone that someone would know if they just researched Winona?
well, who somebody would know if
someone wasn't from here.
wasn't from here and wanted to get a real grip on the
Yeah.
fabric of Winona.
Yeah.
Oh, Chinky Dearman.
Dearman.
Everybody, my age and older, has a Chinky story, and Stanley had a hard time in life. He got in some trouble, but he was short and burly, and had hair all over his body. He liked to watch fires. He set more than a few of them.
Oh, okay.
And, if you ask Jerry Miller, right, his dad and grandfather, William was his dad, and then his grandfather was, I get those Miller families confused. It might have been Joseph. But they used to burn cars Sunday mornings under the bridge when they were down there. So the cushions and stuff would go, and then they'd scrap the metal. One of Jerry's jobs was to go make sure there were no bums sleeping in the cars.
Of course.
But guys like Stanley and stuff who liked fires, and Winona's had a lot of large fires, and Stanley and who knows how many other people would watch these cars burn, and they'd get their fix off of that. And I think if you study fires and people who set fires, habitual fire setters, they get a like an adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
But, you know, they get a little fix out of it.
I've heard of that before.
Yeah, and so, Stanley got some newspaper coverage, but if you walk around the bars and you talk to some of the old guys, they can tell you about Stanley Dearman.
Okay.
And the East End of Winona is full of. We've kind of become detached to the early Kashubian history, and they had some real characters. Some of the people, like West End too, but alcohol and poverty and continued stuff. But some people are good people until they start drinking.
Sure.
And then it just changes. It kind of changes everything.
Yep.
So, but that's a good place to start. The Laird Norton, one of the true tragedies of Winona is the Norton family.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they lost 2 kids in a short period of time. The one grandson of the Norton family ended up running Weyerhaeuser.
Okay.
They partnered with Weyerhaeuser after they kind of shut down operations here. But I'm bad with names. The oldest son died of meningitis at Harvard, and the Winona newspaper followed the family out to. He was going to school at Harvard. The second son, Matthew Jr., took his own life and died of the soft heart disease 6 months later. And the youngest daughter, Beulah, just went in the tank. And I mean, you're talking serious money, right?
Yeah.
So she was still being courted, and one of Matthew Norton Jr.'s classmates came out, and he was son of a gin mill, or a cotton mill that used to be done in Boston and Northeast, and was moving operations south, cheaper, And he was building it, and him and Beulah were going to get married, and Beulah was feeling a little spark, and they were setting up an electrical generator at the time, and down it came, killed him, fell right on top of his head, killed him, and then Beulah went in the tank. So I'll write about Beulah Norton walking around town, black dress flying, and black, the whole 9 yards. And the entire Norton family moved out to Pasadena along the ocean there. They called it Millionaire's Row, because a million back then is like a billion now.
Sure.
And Beulah had a little cabin out there, but they kept that house, which is where the old Y was.
Oh, yep.
Was the Norton Mansion. It was
Oh,
a
yeah,
huge
yeah.
mansion. And they tried giving that mansion away to the city. They tried say, well, we'll put up a park. They wanted a park, and the Y had burned down. Fire's been a real big big issue. When the Y had burned down on the old Hardee's block,
Yep.
where the apartments are now in the 40s, I think.
Yeah.
30s, 40s. And so the Y secured that. And I wish I had gone to that auction or whatever to get some relics from that house.
Yep.
But it was said that after the 2 boys died, that the housekeeper was never to open the doors to their bedrooms. And the Nortons and the Lairds and the Nortons are still around. Their presence in Winona isn't that strong anymore, but they own banks in Chicago, and that fortune has continued on.
Yep.
They support 300, it's about 300 families still. Their foundation.
That's awesome.
It's some smart planning. And,
Sure.
And the Congress when they spoke, the Laird Norton spoke. Wyndham in Congress. We had the Secretary of State who lived or not Secretary of State, Speaker of the House, essentially from back then, was from Winona.
Okay.
And I think Jim Reimlinger owns that house now. It's a 2-story gray house on Broadway.
Okay, he probably does.
Yeah, I mean it's those kind of stories, and those people that used to walk through this town, and you talk to people even in the '60s. 50s and 60s, you see Rolls Royces rolling through Winona.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this town had it all. It was like a city that was a small town.
Yep.
And people liked coming here because they felt safe, and they could talk. People would talk. People would communicate. Townies would talk to really wealthy people. Winona was built on that. Winona was built on that, and there wasn't. I kind of wish we could go back to that.
Yeah.
I kind of wish we could go back to, me and you talking.
Yep.
I mean, that's where it's at.
That's right. I like doing that too. I like going places and talking to people. I'd rather be face to face with someone than across on a phone call or something like that. It's so much better.
I don't do phone very well. I can text.
Okay.
Because I can write.
Right. Yeah. Hunt and peck.
Hunt and peck.
Yep.
And I can talk because that's. I was brought up in a family where I like to talk, and we're missing that. There's been a generational. We've lost that connectivity.
Yeah. Well, nowadays you can just text someone or call someone real quickly if necessary. Before, you'd have to meet up with them and talk to them.
Yeah.
I like being face to face with people too. So that's my preference if I have to have one. Yeah. So, is there more you'd like to add to the podcast? Otherwise, we've been rolling for about an hour and 20.
No. If you ever want me back.
Oh, people love coming back for part twos.
Yeah, and
yes.
I mean, you can grow quick, and I can assimilate what we talk about here today.
Yeah.
I can add some more stories because this is your town. This is my town. This is your day. I mean, everybody we know, or a lot of the people we know, it's our town.
That's right.
And when new people come in, they should know about this town.
They should.
You realtors should all buy this book.
Yes.
You should all buy this book.
Well, I have one now.
Yeah. You all buy that book, and when you sell a house, you should.
That way I'll know the history when I sell someone their house. Then. That'd be a good idea.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, that's awesome. I want to thank you for coming in, Merle. This has been great. And you have 4 published books out there that you can find on Amazon anywhere. So if anybody's listening or watching, look it up on Amazon if you're not from town. Otherwise, you can go around to certain stores in town and find it. But Merle Hanson's got Ageless Winona. The new one, that's Across the Great Divide. That's the one I was gifted that I get to read now and check it out and see some of these stories come to life through the pages. So, again, I want to thank you for coming on in. And for those who are listening out there, you can find this on any major streaming platform. If you want to watch us, it's YouTube. You can see the books, the covers, what they look like. Or if you're listening, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Pandora, any of the major ones, I am out there. But again, this has been another episode of Brews and Cruise. And I want to thank Merle one more time for coming on in and having some THC sodas with me.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers. Been a great time.